Hello and welcome to another episode of Smaulgld Subscribers Sound Off. And today I have the pleasure of bringing back a returning guest, Rory Hall of the Daily Coin. Rory, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Lewis. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, it's good to have you again. And a couple of things caught my eye. I read the Daily Coin daily. There's so much on there. You have to visit it two or three or four times a day. And two of your original work articles caught my eye over the past month or so. One was back in September, was called Seven Reasons to Acquire Gold Today. And the other one was published October 15th, called Gold You Should Own It. Now, we've had a lot of, I would say, theoretical, speculative reasons that a lot of the gold community have been putting forth as to why to buy gold. But what attracted me to your articles was some of the more substantive, evergreen reasons to buy gold. Can you take us through one, what your, impetus was to write these two articles, and then we'll put a link below in the YouTube, the BitChute, and the VidMe, and also on the Smaulgld website, links to your articles so they can follow along. Can you tell us about these articles, maybe starting with the 7 reasons to acquire gold, please, Rory?
Well, all right. And thank you very much, Lewis. The Seven Reasons to Own Gold was a rebuttal to a mainstream media article titled Seven Reasons to Sell Gold. And it's like, okay, so here's another propaganda hit piece, so we need to dispel this. And that was the whole reason for me writing that article. And I took each one of their 7 points and rebuted them. And their first one was charts look ugly, and it's like, who cares? The charts are the charts are manipulated. The only person that I'm aware of that has any handle on reading these charts is Craig Hemke over at TF Metals Report. I mean, he's the only person that I know that can look at the technical charts for gold and silver and come even close to getting it right as to what's actually happening, what has happened, what could happen, and what's happening right now. He's the only person. So it's like this, it doesn't matter what the charts say. It's a rigged market. It's manipulated. Their number 2 was low inflation. Low inflation by what measure? I mean, shadow stats, if you go to John Williams' shadow stats, I mean, the narrative is, what we're told is, when I wrote this article, is the quote, most recently U.S. Labor Department's Consumer Price Index showed a 1.9% annual rate of inflation in August, or 1.7% when excluding food and energy, which is complete and utter nonsense. If you eat, if you go to if you have anything to do with the medical industrial complex, if you drive a car, if you heat your home, cool your home, if you do anything that is real, then John Williams' shadow stats, where he uses the 1990 and 1980 based alternatives, uses the actual models before they started manipulating them, and you would find that if you use the 1980 model, inflation is running about 9.5%, maybe even closer to 10%. So low inflation is nonsense because I eat and I experience or extremely high inflation every week when I go to the grocery store. Their number 3 bullet point was the prospect of further Fed tightening. Well, I said that this is laughable. We just crushed the narrative regarding inflation, and the fact of the matter is a weaker dollar is coming. President Trump has made it very clear that he would like to see a weaker dollar. So who cares? Once again, it's part of the overall manipulation of all the markets. Every single market on planet Earth is now rigged. It's all been proven, and all you have to do is know that the LIBOR is rigged, which is the London Interbank Overnight Rate, and the FX market is rigged, the Forex exchange. Once you have the interest rates globally and the currency valuation, rigged. What else? What else is left? Everything touches those two things. Touches those two markets.
Correct.
So everything has to be rigged.
Well, by the way, interest rates are rigged. We talk about
Interest
that
rates,
as a
exactly.
given. You're talking. They're giving their reason is prospect of further Fed tightening. You could say prospect of further Fed manipulation
Right.
because they fix
Same
interest
thing.
rates. Right. It's manipulation within a manipulation.
Right. It's all nonsense. And
Well, by the way, and gold is
all
not
of these are
manipulated.
believed.
Gold itself. I don't mean the price. Gold itself is immutable. You can't manipulate the composition of it. It is gold, and there's nothing else to say about gold.
Except that it is money. Always has been, always will be,
Well, there you go.
and that's just the bottom line. So gold is it's the, as I've stated before, it's the only money that has shown the fortitude to be able to stand up to these banksters and these out of control governments. It's the only one. I'm not saying that 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 won't change in the future, but throughout all of history, gold has been the only form of money and currency that's had the fortitude to stand up to what we're describing.
And
And
Alan
there's a
Greenspan said that in 1966. He said that the central banks create an insidious inflation, and only gold stands against that.
only gold.
Yes. And here's a guy who's saying that in 1966, and then look what he did when he became the Fed Reserve Chairman. I'm sorry to interrupt
The
your train of
maestro.
thought,
No, you're
Rory.
good.
Let's
No,
let's
it's
get
all
to
good.
let's get to number 4.
Number 4, not so bullish price targets. Well, let's take price, for example. Price is an utter manipulation and a training tool used by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department to keep people ignorant to money. Gold is money. Gold does not have a price. It has an exchange rate, and just the same as it would be like saying that the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, has a price target. It doesn't have a price target. It has an exchange rate. You can get X number of Canadian dollars for X number of US dollars. You can get X number of pound sterlings for X number of Federal Reserve notes, US dollars. Same thing with gold. You can get X amount of gold for X amount of fiat currency. So that in itself is a lie. So the not so bullish price target is total nonsense, and that's just a continuation of this perpetual lie that we've been told and trained on since 1913.
And who do they cite as not having a so bullish price target, Rory?
Goldman Sachs?
Wonderful. And what's the problem with Goldman Sachs price targets?
Well, they always go against the Muppets, their clientele. So whatever they say, they bet against them. They've shown that throughout their history. So if they say it's a not so bullish quote price end quote target, then that must mean that it's very bullish.
And I just want to interrupt, Rory. You have noted that the Muppet term for Goldman Sachs clients is not your own invention. Where did that invention come from?
Came from them. They used it. I mean, it was captured in an email or voice conversation that it was published on Zero Hedge 2 or 3 years ago, where Goldman Sachs called their clientele Muppets. And this is not some trader, not some anonymous trader. This was an executive within Goldman Sachs organization. This was some high-ranking official. And so it's their part of their culture.
Yes, in fact, they refer to them in these email exchanges with each other as Muppet clients.
Right.
These are the dubbed unsophisticated clients that basically will listen to what Goldman Sachs says, just as the media hopes the media people will listen to what they say, in this particular instance, about gold. Anything else on number 4?
No, I think that I'm good with that. I mean,
Let's move on to number 5 then.
number 5 and number 6 are tied together. It's
Okay.
risk on market environment, and number 6 is risk off geopolitical environment. I mean, in number 5, in this article, for the reasons to sell gold, they said that the typical catalyst that ignites a big run for gold is simply fear. Well, fear and greed are the two main motivators for any investment or for any person that is looking to protect their wealth or to grow their wealth. Greed and fear, that's the baseline. So that doesn't matter as far as simply fear being the risk on market environment. That's not right. I'm not afraid. I'm not. Well, I'm afraid of how out of control our government has become and these criminal banksters. I'm certainly scared of them. And my response is not out of fear, but out of education and knowledge and knowing that gold is the only money and currency that has the fortitude to resist these people, to resist what they're doing. And it's the same thing applies in the risk off geopolitical environment. Gold is once again, it's what people go to when things start falling apart. If there's some type of war, let's look at what's happening in Peru, or not Peru, but in Puerto Rico and Venezuela. We have two situations that are on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they are exactly the same. You have a crisis scenario in both of these countries. In Puerto Rico, if you had Bitcoin, guess what? You got nothing. You have absolutely nothing. What is king in Puerto Rico right now, as far as exchange, mediums of exchange, are gold, silver, and cash. That's it. If you don't have one of those three, you don't have anything at all. In Venezuela, you don't have any cash. In Venezuela, Bitcoin, gold, and silver are reigning kings right now. And that's it. And
So-
what is the common denominator there? Gold and silver.
Correct.
Because in one scenario, you have no access whatsoever to Bitcoin, and in the other scenario, Bitcoin does come into play, but gold and silver in both.
Right. Now, what I think happens with 5 and 6 is what I want to get your thoughts on is this article or these criticisms of gold, particularly, but they apply to silver, are geared at the trader mentality. The chart doesn't look good, risk on, risk off. What they're not focused on is what you call the prudent reasons to buy gold, and which you've outlined so far, which is that gold is a store of wealth and insurance. It's not meant to be traded risk on, risk off on COMEX futures. People do that, but that was not the original reason of gold in the monetary system or gold as money. Gold was supposed to be stable.
And it is. It still is.
But they've made it unstable with this, throwing it into it's something to be traded. It traded on futures, traded by charts, and rather than just held, put aside in a vault somewhere.
Right, and we're gonna get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
Because that's the real crux of what I do, what I believe, what I know to be fact, is that gold, if you're looking for wealth protection, if you're looking for generational wealth, then gold and silver they're the only money, only currency in the history of the world. Once again, I'm not saying that going forward in the future that something else won't come along and take its place, but what we have to go by in the 4,000 to 6,000 year history of gold and silver as being money and currency. That's what has been proven. And until something else comes along, and number 7 is the Bitcoin effect in this article.
Something has come along. Let's take a look at that
Something
then.
has come along, and it's called Bitcoin. And as you and I have discussed on numerous occasions, the draining of funds moving into the precious metals sector has been drained into the cryptocurrency space. There are more than 1,100 different cryptocurrencies right now as of today. And this is something that I wrote that I published earlier today. Just imagine, Lewis, had the resources, the quote smartest people in the world, end quote, focused their attention on a single monetary solution. We'll call it gold and silver, as opposed to 1,100 plus solutions, and all of those 1,100 screaming at the top of their lungs, look at me, or look at how big, how gigantic my profits are. And think if all of that had gone into finding and developing a solution that is real, honest money called gold and silver, where would we be at today? If we just went back to 2009 and the birth of Bitcoin, Halloween 2009 or 2008,
Right.
The white paper was released from the NSA and MIT, and just think if just from that time to today, if all of the resources, all of the knowledge, all of the technology had been focused on developing a real, honest system to get to combat this nightmare that these people have forced us into, where would we be at today? Take all of those 1,100 plus developers, all of the resources that have gone into that, all of the millions and billions of dollars that have gone into it, into the development, all of the investment dollars that have gone in, where would we be? I guarantee you, we would have a global solution that would absolutely crush and remain crushed for eternity the system that we have in place right now. It would be a distant memory. I would bet a mint on that.
Well, Rory, before we move on to gold you should own, I just want to comment. You just highlighted the enormous amount of human capital innovation that has gone into Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies. And as you say, that's what's given them their value. That's what's moved them into the forefront. That's what's left gold sitting where it is. I just might add that gold needs no development. Gold needs no infrastructure. Gold doesn't need anything. It already is. So when people try to say Bitcoin is digital gold, it's not. Bitcoin relies on electricity, relies on the internet, or relies on the satellite that holds the blockchain, relies on a whole bunch of different things that involve human involvement, and gold doesn't change, whereas Bitcoin can fork. You can have new Bitcoins. Whatever you want to say about Bitcoin, there's pros and cons to it. It is not digital gold because it relies on it is not immutable. It relies on too many other human inputs for it to be digital gold. It can't be. Gold is gold once it's pulled out of the ground, once it's mined and minted. That's it. There's no more human intervention. You can't improve on it. You can cut it in half. That's about the only improvement you can do. You can melt it down and make another coin out of it, but gold remains an immutable object. Bitcoin is not immutable. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't go up. In fact, the reason Bitcoin has bigger upside than gold, which is not why you own gold in the first place, is because humans can innovate around it. Humans can throw human capital, resources at Bitcoin. You cannot throw any resources at gold other than perhaps to digitize it or lend it or whatever. All right, let's move on now to having.
Well, then I
Go
wanna
ahead,
make
please.
one
It's your
last
show.
comment. The properties that are continually touted about Bitcoin are natural and inherent to gold. It is anonymous, it is off-grid, and it is money.
And it's decentralized.
And it's decentralized. Thank you. Those are the properties that are continually touted as being the reason that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are going to save us from the banksters. Well, gold already has that. Gold
It's already
has
there.
that.
That's right.
It has that in the ground before we dig it out, and then when we dig it out, those properties go right along with it.
Correct.
And it's done. It's over. You can't, like you said, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to be taken. You can't take them out. You can't change them.
You can't improve on gold. It's already there.
It's already there.
And that's the human folly, I suppose, and that's the reason people try to create something better, and that's why they spent all this time, effort, and money to create a digital gold. And of course, it will never equal it. And that's not a cut on Bitcoin, or could be, but the point is, it's a fact that Bitcoin is not digital gold. They could say it's not. You can say it, and people, when you say something like that, they insist that it is, and because they can't accept that there's a cut against an asset class that they like. You could say, well, it has all these other attributes. It may have them, but it is not digital gold.
Nope.
Can't
Never will be.
All right, so let's move on now to gold you should own it. Having refuted the reasons, let's go into, if you were to write the article and having never read the negative reasons, let's go into the positive reasons in your article, Gold You Should Own It.
Well, I think that we've gone over a lot of them, and what I did in this article was to point out the fact that the mainstream media for the past decade or longer has done exactly what I pointed out in the other article. They produce these propaganda pieces that come out and attack gold and tell you to stay away from physical gold. And if you want gold, you should invest in gold. Gold is not an investment. This is not investment advice, by the way, but gold is not an investment. It is money.
Go.
What the mainstream media has done is try to push ETFs onto people. They've tried to make it as if ETFs are gold. They're not. And the paper gold that is an ETF is merely a representation of the movement of gold as far as on the COMEX and how it moves up and down. And it doesn't have anything to do with physical gold at all. And so ETFs are not part of what I see as being insurance. People see them as insurance, but they're not. They think that they have physical gold. They don't. They have exposure to the movement of gold on the COMEX, and that's it. So, but what I've done in this article is I've taken all of these. There seems to have been a change, Lewis. As you know, the mainstream media, they like producing these propaganda pieces, but beginning back in June or July, on July the 12th, actually, Terry Duffy was on, the president of the CME Group, which owns the COMEX. He was on live TV stating that gold should actually be valued between $5,000 and $6,000 an ounce, just based on the geopolitical, economic, and financial news that we live with every day. And what I've done is I've taken this series of now 7 different articles that ended. The latest one was produced on October 13th by those bastions of fake news, CNN. So we've gotten to the bottom of the barrel as far as mainstream media coming out and saying you should own physical gold, not ETFs, which ETFs has been what they've been pushing for the past decade or more, ever since they came online. That's all that mainstream media has ever pushed. And now, beginning in July, they've done a complete 180, and they started saying you should own physical gold. And Jeff Christian, love him, hate him, doesn't matter to me, came out and stated that your portfolio should be upwards of 30% physical gold. That is an unbelievable statement. So the first thing is, why the change? And the second thing, they've also begun, which I find interesting, is that they've begun challenging or questioning cryptocurrencies and trying to steer where they've been all summer. They've been pumping up cryptocurrencies. You should get in these. You should be involved with them. They're doing great. Look at Bitcoin. Look at this. Look at that. And now all of a sudden they're saying cryptocurrencies may not be the way to go. And the banksters and the mainstream media both are doing this. And my thing is that I just want to own physical gold. I don't really pay attention to the mainstream media and what they're saying. I do pay attention because it's important to know what they're saying, but I don't follow anything, if that makes sense. I don't follow their advice. I'm not listening to Goldman Sachs. I'm not listening to J.P. Morgan or any of these criminals.
You're not a Muppet?
I'm not a Muppet, no.
Oh, okay. I never thought
No.
you were.
Well, but I just document what they are saying because it's important to know what they're telling the masses. And that's what I've tried to do with this article, Gold, You Should Own It. And I stated in this article that the article that CNN produced was nothing short of psychological warfare, because the article is based on the quote psychology of gold, and the article is focused on the color, but they also get into, which is where the title of that article came from, Gold, You Should Own It. They actually state that within the article, and this is a direct quote, and this is, gold carries with it the messaging that you should own it. It is a learned, conditioned response. This was actually within the article. Mm-hmm. And once again, they're talking about, the article is wrapped in this veil of gold as a color and what the psychology of that color, what it does to people and how it impacts them. But they're also talking about physical gold.
Right.
And what the physical gold, when people wear it or when it's part of their clothing or it's part of their jewelry, whatever, what that does, what that invokes in other people and their response. And it's, like I said, it's pure psychological warfare. And
would you say that ETFs have that 24/7 physical allure?
no.
Of course not. And if you want gold as insurance, and what happens when there's a financial crisis? What do they do with the markets?
Well, that's the people in Puerto Rico, how their gold ETFs working out for them.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't because they don't have any electricity or cell phone service. That's right. So
Okay.
forget that.
And what about the rest of the world if they decide to close the markets? That's precisely the time that you need your physical gold or
Right.
access to it outside of the system in gold money or some type of platform that hasn't been shut down because of a financial crisis. So
Right.
whatever insurance you think you're getting by buying an ETF, you're getting insurance against little things that aren't going to like devastate the financial system. Maybe there's a little talk of a war, so the price goes up. You get the benefit of the ETF going higher. But if there actually is a war and they close the markets down, your ETF, whatever gold you think you have in that ETF, it's useless.
Useless. You have no access to it. And we can look at what happened in 2008. How long did they close the markets at that time? Was it 2 days or 3 days?
I thought it was, well, also 9/11 markets were closed for a week, if you remember.
9/11. Look what they did in Cyprus. I mean, I love using Cyprus, and the reason that I keep Cyprus in front of people is because they being the Federal Reserve who wrote the paper that presented it to the IMF, and the IMF said, yes, this is the go forward model. When Cyprus closed down their banks for almost 2 weeks, it may have been more than 2 weeks, and then they came back, and so during this bank holiday, they bank closure. Let's call it what it is. It's not a holiday. It's a bank closure. When they were shut down, they allowed people to be able to get the equivalent. Started out the equivalent of $300 a day, and they said no, 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 no. You can only get $100 a day.
And then, by the way, when they finally opened, you took a haircut. There was a bail, and so not only were you out during the period of time the bank was closed, when they finally opened the bank, you had less. Whereas if you had gold the whole time, you had an ounce. You had an ounce at the beginning, you had an ounce during, and you had an ounce at the end of it.
Right. And it wasn't just it was the rules were changing. Everything was shifting and changing during this bank closure.
Right.
When you have no access to your funds, this is your money, this is your wealth that they have now seized, and they were changing the rules the whole time, saying, well, if you have the equivalent of $250,000, then we're going to take X number of percentage, and then they changed it to 100,000. Then when it finally got to the end, they said we're going to take, I think it was 40% of all accounts.
Right.
And it's just, so that's, and like I said, the reason that I continually bring that up is because the IMF has stated that this is the go forward model. When things get bad, this is exactly how we're going to handle it.
Right.
And
it's more important to them is protecting their banking system and the entire system than your wealth. So if you want to look out for yourself, don't count on the banking system to look out for it for you.
Not going to happen. No, they see us as an ATM, as cattle, as sheep, something to be brought to market and sold to the highest bidder. That's it. That's all that we are. And the only way, from my perspective, for me to do anything about that, protect myself, protect my family from that, is by converting as much fiat, as much of their criminal fiat as possible into real, honest money, gold and silver, period.
Well, the irony or the insult of a bank holiday and them saying you need to help bail in the bank, you don't benefit from their profits, but they expect you to help out with the losses. In fact, a lot of the new model is not only will they maybe give you a haircut, they may say, well, you're going to have to take equity in the bank. When it's useless now, the bank has already collapsed, and now they're saying, do you want to have some equity in this bank? You're like, no, I just want my money back.
Right, I want all of my money back.
Yeah. How about you get the benefit of the JP Morgan trading when it's going up? And then they say, well, you don't get that, but if the bank collapses, you owe them money. It's not really, it's not even, it's beyond not fair. It's confiscation.
It's theft.
It's theft.
Let's
bigger
call it
word.
what it is. It's theft.
I used a 4-syllable word instead of a 1-syllable word.
I'm a simple man, Lewis.
There you go, but not a Muppet. Anything else on your mind today, Rory, before we wrap up this Smaulgld subscribers sound off series episode?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope people learn something from it.
I'm sure they do, and let us know where they can find you and all your wonderful work.
Well, they can find me over at thedailycoin.org, and that's thedailycoin.org. You can find me there at the main website, and I also have a YouTube channel of the same name, The Daily Coin. So,
excellent. Well, thank you very much, Rory, for joining me today, and we'll have you on again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Lewis.